Welcome everyone to another episode of the Shaman's Way podcast. As always, this episode comes from the teachings of our amazing friend and shaman in residence, Kriket. We hope you're enjoying these podcasts as much as we enjoy making them, and I'd like to take just a moment to ask you if you would please leave us a rating and a comment in iTunes or whichever podcast player you're listening to us from. Giving us a rating and sharing this podcast with others is the biggest way you can tell us that you like our show. Now, without further ado, on with the episode.
Hello, my constant listeners, and hello to my new listeners and to my semi-tune-in listeners. Thank you for lending me your ear and your time. I'm going to talk today about Anaconda. There was someone or two someones, I can't remember now, who had requested a podcast for Anaconda. Now, I just want to say that I have currently worked through all of the requests for podcasts, and I would like to invite my constant listeners, my new listeners, and my listeners of occasion to let me know if there is something that they particularly would like to see or hear about, and I will see what I can do for you. Now, I really want to start off with some basic information because there's a couple of things that I didn't know, and if I didn't know, then chances are there are possibly one, maybe even four of you who don't know. Anacondas, I discovered, live in Central and South America, and they're commonly found in tropical rainforests. There are some that say you can find giant anacondas in Brazil, but we don't know about that. There's cryptozoologists say they exist, and zoologists say no, they don't exist. So we don't know if giant anacondas exist. But as we know, this beautiful, amazing world of ours is full of secrets, and many do not give up easily. So we all know that empires have risen and fallen, and many of the mysteries and enigmas are left unresolved throughout the centuries. When I started to do some research a few years ago on Aztec legends and the beginning of the Papuval and the jaguar and the Mayan mysteries, I found that there was a god among the Aztecs of Mexico called Quetzalcoatl. And Quetzalcoatl was a flying serpent, and possibly it becomes a part of the dragon mythology or the dragon myths, but it could very well come from the fact that our ancestors saw these incredibly large snakes. Now, I didn't realize the difference between pythons and anacondas, so I ran into that information as I was putting together this podcast. So I think that pythons and anacondas are the biggest and possibly even the greatest snakes in the world. Although I have my own favorite of snakes, I think these are very potent and powerful. Some people think that anaconda and python are the same. However, there are two different families of snakes. Anacondas belong to the boa family, and they're found, again, like I said, in South America, especially in the Amazon basin. The python belongs to the family Pythonidae. I'm not sure if I pronounced that Latin word correctly. And what that does, the python prowls or moves through the thick and dense forests of South Asia, Southeast Asia, and Sub-Saharan Africa. The anaconda is the heaviest and the biggest snake in the world. On the other hand, the python is no doubt the longest snake. I think that's where my confusion came from. I thought the anaconda was the longest snake, so I was quite surprised when I found out the python is the longest. However, the anaconda can weigh as much as 550 pounds and can grow up to 25 feet. The python can grow 33 feet or more. However, a 20-foot anaconda will certainly outweigh a much longer python. The anaconda is not a choosy eater. As long as the prey can be overpowered, then it's included in the anaconda menu. In fact, they can overpower crocodile and jaguars and eat them whole. The python, however, is a bit choosy with its food. It loves mammals and birds only. The anaconda is aquatic and lives in marshes, in some swamps and some rivers. It's a very good swimmer, and its eyes are located on the top of the head, much like a crocodile or an alligator, and this allows them to see the prey while submerged in water. So even though they love to perch in trees and stay on drier land, they are phenomenal hunters. They see in the dark, and python does, and it sees in the dark, which is why it can ambush helpless mammals and birds. So the anaconda, it bites its prey and drowns the poor creature in water, where the python, it constricts and crushes animals. The two snakes are considered giants. Anacondas are heavier and bulkier, while pythons are longer and more agile. When I wanted to find some myths with respect to the anaconda, I found Mama, which is the Peruvian goddess that is the goddess and the creator of all rivers and all lands. So she's considered feminine and magical. And she's the mother of the waters, the mother of rivers, the deity of rivers. She lives exclusively in the water. She means, so Mama means mother of the water. The water goddess is portrayed as the anaconda or the snake. And when she came to the earth's surface, she transformed into a great river. She could also pass to the upper world in the shape she was in another shape. She is a huge anaconda thought to live at the bottom of lakes and rivers, and it's the water component of Mama, which is the goddess of the earth. So the Mama can dive deep into the waters and become submarine or travel on the surface of the water as a steamboat. Ancient legends refer to two mythical serpents who operated on 3 levels of the universe. I haven't talked very much about the Peruvian worlds, the Hancapacha, Cayapacha, and Ucapacha. The 2 serpents that they represent began in the lower world. And it seems to be that there were 3 worlds in this, and they were united by the serpent gods of water and fertility, which I think is kind of interesting. I did do my 64th podcast was on snakes. So some of this might go in line with that and share some information that might already be on there. However, that's not necessarily the case. The snakes in shedding their skin is probably one of the more potent things that I wish to really harp upon or really make notice of. What I find absolutely wonderful about the snakes is that they have a thin membrane on the outside of their eye. I think this is to compensate for their lack of, mobile limbs or something along the lines. So when a snake wriggles its way through the forest floor, it pushes its way through thick underground. So you can imagine there's a grain of sand, there's a sharp twig, these things get in the eye. And because the eye does not have a lid like ours, it has no means of defending itself or even a clear path. If something gets in its eye, it can't fish it out, and the eye ends up scratched. So the snake's eye membrane is very important to keeping it very, very healthy. So the cornea of the snake is extremely sensitive. So the membrane that surrounds it is clear, and this provides very good information or protection for it. What I found interesting when I was doing some research on it is that parts of the eye are replaced when the reptile sheds its skin. And shedding the skin is very clever, as it enables the snake to shed off damage also caused by sand, gravel, and branches, something that I hadn't really considered before. And I imagine the heavier the snake, perhaps more damage. I don't know. That's just my intellect, but I could be totally wrong on that. The thin membrane does not lie directly on top of the cornea. It's separated by a thin layer of fluid, and that's what keeps the eye moist. There are some very amazing characteristics of snakes, and the characteristics of snakes are so impressed a group of Danish scientists that they initiated a research project to investigate the membrane and understand it works. And they're hoping to do this in the hopes of creating new contact lenses. I found that quite interesting. As we know that many cultures refer to the eye as the mirror of the soul, there is something in this motto because the eye is an actual fact projecting part of the brain. You cannot think with the eye, but even so, it can be perceived as part of the brain. It develops it is perceived as part of the brain. The ancients received insights about life through nature and observing the animals and cycles. And they believed that there was a wisdom that each life form held, and that snakes in particular knew the secrets of death that leads to rebirth. And I know that we've talked about this before, or I've talked about this before. It doesn't mean that there has to be an actual physical death, but it can merely be a symbolic death of everything that was once being released in order to emerge through a new expansive doorway of experience, unencumbered by anything. And I believe that's partly why the snake was given such reverence. And if you were to see a snake that weighed 550 pounds and was 20 feet long, and was bigger than anything you had seen in the forest and lived in the waters, it makes sense that you would attribute that particular beautiful creature some of the most outstanding ways of representing the world. Every single culture has more than one myth about snake, and some societies even have a creation myth, including the snakes. We go way back. Few animals reign supreme like the snake in our psyche. To complicate things even further, there are over 3,000 species of snakes in the world. They live in a wide variety of habitats, as you know. Some are in the jungle, some are in the desert. They can offer helpful pest control, and they also carry deadly venom. So the symbolism of the snake is different depending on the species. So everyone agrees on one thing. Well, I think so. I'm going to say one thing. Snake symbolism is the embodiment of transmutation. This is, when we shed our skin, we are going through a process of transmutation. Depending on the age of the snake, this happens 1 to 4 times a year and serves to renew the scales and remove lice, and again remove the marks or the scrapes or the pains that the snake has encountered as it is moving through the underbrush. When we say, I'm going to crawl out of my skin, we're tapping, I think, into the intelligence of snake medicine. I've never really explored the idea of the venomous snake, but I want to talk a little bit about not necessarily that the anaconda or is a venomous snake. The anaconda has backwards growing teeth in order to pull that animal in. One of the aspects of the anaconda that I found very interesting reading over and over is how badly they stunk and how bad their breath was. I'm assuming it's because of decomposing animals in their body, but I really have no idea. So I'm going to take a little bit of a side jump off of the anaconda and talk about the venomous snake, because I don't believe I spoke about that in my initial podcast on snakes. 1/10 of snake species are venomous, and a smaller portion of those are deadly. So considering what a snake means for you, you need to determine if the snake is a spirit kin you're working with, is venomous or not. If not, the snake may act as a benevolent companion for you, teaching about its origins of that life, death, rebirth cycle. Also consider the meaning of the snake in relation to healing and medicine. But if the snake is venomous, it's a galvanizing guide through a fierce remaking of your life. So venom is intended to inflict pain, and you may now very well be enduring a painful process if you've encountered a venomous snake. This could be an initiation meant to wake up the primal life force within you and help you to learn your mettle. You will need to dig deep to find the power to transmute the suffering into a blessing. And sometimes we feel like the things in our life are venomous to us. Once the suffering is not induced from the outside, but is internal, anger and resentment fostered over time create an unhealthy buildup of venom in our systems. How many times have we heard that quote attributed to Buddha, which is being angry with another person is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. Whether or not Buddha actually said that, I don't know, but it sounds pretty neat. If you're hearing the warning hiss of a venomous snake in your ear, turn your efforts to transmuting the poison in your words and in your mind. So journeys are helpful for this. Prayer is helpful for this. If there is, if you do have a buildup of venom in your life, process what is it that is making you feel this fierce? What is it that is forcing you to remake your life? How far down do you have to dig deep to transmute the suffering into a blessing? In one myth about Asclepius, I can never get that right, the Greek god of healing, he learned how to bring the dead back to life from a snake. He killed a snake and watched a companion snake bring herbs that brought the dead snake back to life. Temples built to Asclepius were hospitals that hosted non-venomous snakes that traveled the floors among the infirm. So his rod is still used as a sign of the medical profession. The symbol of the snake entwined around the staff is an earlier image seen in the protective goddess Wadjet or Udajet. And later, we talk about there in the Bible, there is that Moses raised the brass and brazen serpent in the wilderness. However, I'm going to do a little side point here because I find this interesting. Is that Moses had a staff, and this has nothing to do with snakes, but I find it interesting that, that Moses came up in my research, because Moses, I think, was one of the original dowsers. In finding water was very challenging. I mean, if you're wandering through the desert, I'm sure that, finding water is going to be a primary focus of yours. But he used his staff and quote unquote struck against a rock, quote unquote, and all of a sudden there was water. So I think he was dousing water with a rod. Anyway, that's beside the point. If you have been bit by a fiery serpent, then we need to look at what is it that is biting you? What is it that the snake is trying to get your attention of? What is it that the intuition is? Remember that snakes are one of the very few beings that live in all three levels of the world. So we have the anaconda, who is the queen and the mother of living beneath the surface, living deep in the waters, living in the clouded waters, because anacondas don't necessarily have the brightest, cleanest water to move through. I mean, it's going through a forest, so there's going to be a lot of runoff into the water and so on and so forth. These associations with venomous and with snakes is that the carrier of death is also the one to deliver the cure. It's a very homeopathic viewpoint, like cures like, cures like. It may look like a misfortune is simply meant to cause you harm, but the cure is part of the medicine. This is where we see the nature of the cycle of death and rebirth as a hallmark of snakes, and this, the Ouroboros, that snake eating its own tail. In honesty, real snakes have poor vision and they don't have ears, but they sense a lot of their environment by picking up scent molecules on their tongues and pulling them in their mouths to taste the world. They also focus on the vibration. They're very sensitive bodies. They have thousands of nerve endings, and the vibration on the forest floor is what gives the snake the idea that something is coming, or the knowledge that something is coming. When they slither about flicking their tongues, we can think about taste, tasting the air, and taste is connected to nourishment. So is the snake helping you to determine which environment is most nourishing for you? And is it helping you to seek out that which feeds you? And as I mentioned earlier, with respect to the anaconda, its teeth are pointed backwards and their jaws are unfused. So the anaconda's jaw moves so large that they can swallow their prey whole. This means they eat fewer and larger meals. Now, it may be a time in your life when you come into a time of abundance, more than you think you can take in at once. And this is followed by a long digestion period. Cool, calm, and collective. This cold-blooded being helps us to distance ourselves from the drama of life. So those spectacle scales that I talked about always earlier protect and cover our eyes. And snakes, again, they have no way of closing their eyes. So when we wear eyeglasses, it's about putting things into perspective. With the help of a snake as your spirit kin, you can learn to protect your perspective and always keep your eyes open. This speaks about not falling prey to illusion or being caught unaware. The old skin has to be shed before a new one can come. That's Joseph Campbell, and I will refer to him as you know a lot. And he goes on to say that the snake symbolism of shedding skin is a metaphor for inner growth. If you want resurrection, you must have crucifixion. We must be willing to get rid of the life we planned so as to have the life that is waiting for us. This can be a challenge for some. And currently, this is the process we're all simultaneously experiencing, a deep inner house cleaning of all that no longer serves, a new paradigm, that new collective reality of birthing. And I've talked quite a bit about trauma, instinct, injury, and how to heal from trauma, sexual assault, and I've talked about the spirit of addiction. So we've talked a lot about clearing out the inside. Letting go also, however you do that. And I mean, it's an easy term to say letting go, but it's not always an easy thing to do. But when we do let go, even if it's bit by bit, what we're doing is we're allowing the next stage of growth to flow in. And sometimes this is upon you and you willingly engage in the process. And other times it erupts like a volcano, seeming to come out of nowhere. But it's still reflecting what you desire and what you've asked for. You just forgot and didn't realize what was all entailed in the process. When you say, I want to leave, I want to have a change. Well, sometimes change is chaos, and chaos is not always easy. Chaos is born of change, and we need change in this life. We seriously do need change. The snake, the anaconda, if I were to reflect upon it, not necessarily all of the wonderful aspects of it with respect to, its hugeness, its largeness, but if you have the anaconda as a spirit kin, I think you are really moving in with the largeness of life, the capacity and the capability of creating a much larger life for yourself. I also want to consider that being in the water and submerging yourself and only having your eyes above the top of your head, I find very interesting from a spiritual perspective, because we often need to be aware outside of our body. If we're covered by something, and that something could be as debilitating, say, as a physical illness, then perhaps what you could do is call upon the anaconda and ask the anaconda to give you its strength and its ability to know what is nourishment and what is not. It also could be, if you're carrying the mantle of spiritual awareness, so many empaths that I know, some are very, very heightened empaths. And what they do is they submerge themselves. And many times empaths are wounded or very uncomfortable in the quote unquote real world or their 3D reality. if the anaconda has come to you, then I would recommend that perhaps you focus on the ability of the anaconda to stay submerged and yet fully aware, seeing around it. Now, even though the anaconda doesn't have great eyesight, the anaconda has enough eyesight to know where its next meal will come from, to also know what is in the water with it, and its whole body, much like the empath, the whole body is able and willing to receive messages. I find that very interesting. Also the Waisiumama, the ancient Central and South American goddess of the water, is very potent. She's primordial. If I spoke Spanish, I'm sure that I could find many more myths, but it's challenging to find them when you're an English speaker, and there aren't a lot of scholarly articles written on the use of snakes or the belief of snakes in Central and South American cosmology and mythology. But I believe that if it has been given the benevolent position of being the creator of all water, I mean, there are other snakes that are given the status of being that which created. But with the anaconda, I feel that it is, as I said earlier, it is feminine. I don't always see all snakes as feminine, but if it is Waisiumama, it is feminine, and it is fierce, it is protective, it can drown anything. And I don't mean that in a battle sense, I don't mean that in a being mean sense, or whatever the case is. What I mean by that is sometimes you have to put your arms around something that is challenging you, and you have to find a way to kill it. And if you can't kill it, then you have to find a way to at least knock it out so you can find more information and value in it. One of the things you could kill through using the anaconda would possibly be a fear of water. What if you have a fear of not moving forward in life? Well, there's not much that the anaconda fears. It is the apex predator among apex predators. There are very few things that can kill the anaconda. Motorboats are one of the things. Humans are another thing. But they are very self-sufficient. And if the anaconda has visited you, I would assume you are a very self-sufficient person. I would also assume that you do many things on your own, and that you possibly don't have a great relationship to the other mysteries or the gentler things in life. And perhaps the anaconda is reminding you that you can take a look at the more beautiful aspects of life or the gentler aspects of life. I think that could be very important for you as well. The anaconda is steeped in wonderful mythology, and I think that is interesting to explore for yourself. What is it that you're looking for? What is it in the mythology that could necessarily bring you back to your place? I want to leave you with a quote from Joseph Campbell's The Hero with 1,000 Faces. Then, when looking back at your life, you will see that the moments which seem to be the great failures, followed by the wreckage, were the incidents that shaped the life you have now. You'll see that this is really true. Nothing can happen to you that is not positive. Even though it looks and feels at the moment like a negative crisis, it is not. The crisis throws you back, and when you are required to exhibit strength, it comes. Again, Joseph Campbell. I think that the anaconda is potent medicine. If this has come up in your spirit world and is a spirit kin for you, and you have further information or you wish to discuss it, please drop me an email. I would love to hear from you. In the meantime, I would like to leave you with my absolute gratitude for spending time with me and for sharing this time with me. I would like to say gratitude for my constant listener, and gratitude for the new listener, and absolute gratitude for my in-between listeners. I feel very blessed to continue to come to the microphone and prepare topics, some better prepared for others, and some topics are longer than others. But I really am inspired by your questions, by your comments, and by your feedback. So please continue to share your thoughts and your messages with me. It is with pleasure that I say I look forward to seeing you, hearing you, and being in your presence again very soon. I wish you all the very best.
Thank you again for joining us here on the Shaman's Way podcast. If you have any questions, would like to make a request for a future episode, or if you're looking for other shamanic resources, including free drumming tracks, please visit us at shamansway.net. Until the next episode, be well, everyone.